There's a strange kind of comfort in the way social media works. Everyone has a name, a profile picture, a handful of followers. Everything feels traceable, manageable. But that sense of control is mostly an illusion. Behind the usernames and the private messages, there's a part of the internet built to keep people out. It doesn't rely on algorithms or exposure. It spreads through private servers, closed groups, and invite-only links passed from one person to the next. And once someone's inside, getting out isn't always simple. Over the last few years, that darkness has started to take shape. Investigators are now tracking what they describe as one of the most rapidly growing online threats in the world, a decentralized, ideologically driven network that has already been linked to dozens of victims across multiple countries. According to the FBI, the group coerces vulnerable individuals into producing CSAM, self-mutilation, and extreme violence. And in the most severe cases, victims have been pushed to taking their own lives. This is Group 764. "764 didn't begin as a movement. It began with a teenager. Bradley Cadenhead was 15 when he created the group from his bedroom in Stephenville, Texas. Online, he went by the name Felix, using 764 from his town's zip code. But what that name came to represent would stretch far beyond a single location. His behavior had been escalating for years. At 8, he was already watching adult content. Soon after, it shifted toward violent content, torture videos, gore, anything brutal. And by the time he was 13, he had already been placed on juvenile probation for talking about shooting up a middle school. The next year, he violated the terms and was sent to a juvenile facility. Probation reports showed a steady decline. Cadenhead refused to participate in counseling. He assaulted his mother, he left home without permission, and was eventually hospitalized after ingesting large quantities of Tylenol and cough syrup. Nothing improved. His world got smaller, and when it did, the internet filled in the gaps. He spent most of his time online. Minecraft led him to Discord, and on Discord, he found something else, a server called Cult, spelt CVLT. The group was run by a French user named Rohan and specialized in grooming minors for explicit content. According to internal reports from Discord's security team, this is where Cadenhead learned to manipulate children. He said another user introduced him to gore, and from there, everything escalated. He took what he had learned and started building a new server. The name was 764. Using variations of the name Felix, he dropped into chat rooms daily, spreading links, posting explicit images, and urging people to join him in more private spaces. When he was banned, he created new accounts. When users pushed back, he threatened them. He bragged about being device banned from nearly every email service. He said he'd gone through over 400 Felix accounts, 100 more just to get back on Discord. Even Roblox had banned him, twice. In one case, he encouraged a 10-year-old girl to send inappropriate photos of herself. In another, he told someone who had just survived taking their own life to try again. When other users warned him to stop, he laughed. He bragged constantly, said his extortions were wild. Other users called him a god, Felix the CP god. One 14-year-old girl from Oklahoma said she was blackmailed by him into cutting herself on camera, even going so far as making her mutilate her pet hamster. What began as a replica of Cult quickly turned into something more, something ideological. The group borrowed heavily from an older extremist network called the Order of Nine Angles, or O9A. It's a violent organization that merges Satanism, neo-Nazism, and occultism. Members are told to reject empathy, to see morality as weakness. They glorify ritual violence, and they promote a concept called culling, the idea that real power comes from harming others without hesitation. Cadenhead treated 09A like a blueprint. 764 built its identity around the belief that systems should fall. It wasn't created to gain influence or money. It was created to cause harm. The FBI and Department of Justice say the group's goal is to destabilize society by targeting the most vulnerable people they can find. That often means children, but it isn't limited to them. Their targets are chosen based on access. If someone can be broken, they're useful. Maybe the most unsettling part is that 764 is only one part of it. Surrounding the group is a larger network of subgroups, aliases, and temporary servers. Slittown, Leak Society, Harm Nation, 303, 555, 404, Hell, and No Lives Matter, to name a few. In these spaces, ideology is less about belief and more about permission. Some users invoke 09A references without knowing where they come from. Others wear them proudly. But the overlap is always there. Nazi symbolism, praise for mass shooters, sadistic memes, screen grabs of abuse passed around like trophies. The most violent content earns the most respect, and the more disturbing the video, the higher the status. FBI investigators have called these users nihilistic violent extremists, not because they're chasing a cause, but because they're not chasing anything at all. For them, the end goal is total destruction. Most coverage focuses on the abuse, but inside these groups, it's also a system of recruitment. Young people are pulled in, pushed past boundaries, and reshaped until they either disappear or become part of it. Most of the time, it starts the same way. It usually begins in spaces built around pain, Discord servers centered on self-harm, forums where depression is openly discussed but rarely moderated, group chats where no one's really paying attention. These are the environments the group moves through, watching silently until someone says the right thing. A member reaches out, often appearing calm and supportive. They might pose as another teenager or speak like someone who understands, but it was never about helping in the first place. Most of their activity happens on Discord and Telegram, though other platforms have been used at different points. Instagram, Roblox, Minecraft, even SoundCloud. Most of the victims are between the ages of 9 and 17. Many are already struggling with mental health, with identity, or just with being alone. And the goal is always the same. Find someone vulnerable, cut them off, and make them believe they've finally found somewhere they belong. From there, it moves quickly. They shift to private servers, voice calls, and screen share sessions. Victims are told to follow instructions, sometimes framing it as a game, other times as a challenge. Occasionally, that first task crosses a boundary, but once it's done, that's where it starts. They ask for proof, photos or videos, something that can be saved. And once they have it, the tone changes. The messages get sharper. The victim is told that if they don't continue, their secrets will be shared, their family will be contacted, their lives will be ruined. It becomes a trap, and the only way out, they're told, is to keep going. At this point, the requests turn into demands. Victims are made to film themselves cutting into their own skin. They're told to carve usernames or group names into their bodies. These are called cut signs, a kind of brand that shows who they belong to. Others are told to hurt animals, to involve siblings, to create material that escalates with every video. And it's all recorded. Some members will even live stream the abuse. Others host what they call watch parties, where victims are tormented in front of an audience. The footage is saved, archived, and traded. And the more violent it is, the more status the abuser earns, almost like a badge of honor. The victims are left traumatized. Some never come forward. Others try, But by then it's too late. The group already has their information, their faces, their voices, even their school names. And even when the servers get shut down, the files don't disappear. They're stored, reshared, and sometimes reused to lure in someone else. For some, the damage ends there, but others stay, pulled deeper into the group, until they're no longer just victims. Investigators say many of the most active members started as victims themselves, brought in young, manipulated and broken down, and then built back up again as part of the system. They stay because they're scared, or because it's the only place where they feel accepted. But over time, they become recruiters, becoming the thing they once feared. And that's what makes this group so hard to stop. It regenerates. Since 2021, criminal cases have been opened in the US, UK, Germany, Romania, and Brazil. Some of the worst content has been linked back to a core set of users. One of them, known online as Gore Butcher, ran an invite-only channel tied directly to Order of Nine Angles. He's believed to be a Florida man named Angel Almeida, a dropout with a long arrest record and a history of violence. He's not the only one. Some members write instructions, literal guides on how to groom and exploit, telling others what kind of girls to target, what to say, when to push, and when to escalate. These documents are shared inside the group, alongside folders of abuse, cut-sign compilations, and violent memes. Platforms say they're working on it. Discord claims they shut down 130 groups and banned over 34,000 users tied to the network in a single year. Roblox says it monitors 764-themed skins and removes references when flagged. Instagram and Telegram both say the same, but even now, hundreds of 764-related accounts are still active. The group simply moves faster. Some have spent years being manipulated. Others were pulled in and discarded almost immediately. But all of them were changed by it. And the stories that have surfaced since, both the ones that were recovered or told by the people left behind, show just how far this really goes. The people behind these groups aren't all the same, but what connects them isn't where they started, it's what they choose to do once they get inside. Some of them used threats, others forced their victims to hurt themselves, but in certain groups, the abuse focuses on animals, and in one of the most widely shared cases, it was a girl known online as Holy Girl 222. She had been active in several servers linked to Kaskar, one of the groups that branched off from 764. Members knew her name, they knew her voice, and eventually, they knew what she was willing to do. In one photo, she's holding a handwritten fan sign with the name Court 764. In her other hand is the body of her cat, the one she had just been forced to kill. The name belonged to Joseph Schoonover, known online as Courtbox. Back in 2018, he was just another anonymous kid on the internet. He spent most of his time making stick figure animations on a site called Flippernim, where he was bullied constantly. And when that didn't stop, he started looking for a way to make people take him seriously. That's when he decided to join 764. He joined the group, copied its methods, and then built something of his own. A spin-off called Kaskar. The purpose was the same: coercion, humiliation, and control. As a result, he would be doxxed. With that came information about who Joseph was, old accounts and old photos. The only images that ever surfaced showed him as a child, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The docs also confirmed his family members. His sister had been arrested, reportedly for punching a teacher, and when his mother died, her obituary page was found and flooded with images of the girl he had coerced, the one holding up a sign with his name and her deceased cat. Holy Girl 222 would also eventually be doxxed and swatted. People in the group said she wanted it, that she did it for attention, but Discord logs show that it wasn't her choice. She had been forced. Another case tied to the network involved a user known as Harm. His real name was Abdullah Ali. He was based in Egypt and had been active across multiple servers connected to 764. He regularly posted images of animal abuse, sometimes involving animals he harmed, sometimes showing victims who had been made to do it for him. In one of the most well-known videos linked to his account, a girl is seen on a Discord call killing her cat on camera. The audio is muted, but throughout the recording, a voice labeled Harm is seen speaking. The images and videos, like so many others, became part of the archive. Most of the victims were forced, but not all of the violence was. Nino Luciano was born on July 4, 2004, in Germany. His parents were addicts. His father was in prison, and from the moment he was born, he was in withdrawal. By the time he was 6, he was sleeping with a knife under his pillow. He had violent outbursts, and his mother described his childhood as unstable, filled with psychiatric placements and temporary housing. In 2011, he was admitted to a clinic for the first time. From there, he was transferred to a residential care group, and eventually, the decision was made to send him out of the country. During that time, he was medicated daily. He said the drugs made him feel numb, like he was on another planet. The German state covered the full cost of his placement, more than €400 per day, which included therapy, psychiatric consultations, clothing allowances, and pocket money. By the time he turned 18, the total had reached nearly €900,000. The support stopped the day he became an adult. 10 months later, he murdered someone. On the morning of April 12, 2022, Nino was seen slashing the tire of a parked car in the town of Mediash. He wandered the streets for hours. At one point, he offered a one-lei note to an elderly man, then turned and followed him. The man became uncomfortable and ran, and so Nino moved on. 2 hours later, he found someone else. On Pultenish Street, a 74-year-old woman was taking out her trash. Nino approached her and said hi. Then he knocked her to the ground, kicked her repeatedly, and cut her throat. He streamed the entire attack over Discord. The killing was meant to prove something. He believed it would get him into a group called MKY, short for Maniac Murder Cult, a Romania-based offshoot connected to 764. He had also been active in other cells, including one called 6996 and a smaller group known as Necrohunt. She was neither Roma nor Jewish, but Nino later claimed he believed she was, that the killing had been racially motivated. Later that night, he posted about the murder in a Telegram chat. He was arrested the next day and charged with aggravated murder, attempted murder, destruction, and possession of CSAM. In August, he pled guilty and was sentenced to 14 years in prison under an educational measure focused on rehabilitation. The court ordered that he remain under psychiatric treatment for as long as necessary. In a similar fashion, a 14-year-old boy began attacking strangers at night. Over the course of a few months, he stabbed 8 individuals in Hässelby, Sweden, recorded it, and posted it on Telegram to gain more status and promote the Swedish branch of No Lives Matter, which he ran. His victims were mostly elderly. His username was Slain764. He would eventually be caught and charged. Solna District Court ruled that the boy was guilty of attempted murder after a hearing, but since he was under 15 years old, he couldn't be convicted of the crime and simply had to pay damages of over 250,000 krona, or just over $26,000, to the man. Another name that kept coming up was Vincent Collison. He called himself Yuki. He was 18 and a member of Kaskar. Yuki was one of the most active extortionists linked to the network. He moved across platforms like Discord, Instagram, and Roblox, and targeted minors through private messages and server invites. Once contact was made, he pushed for more. Yuki and the people around him are believed to be responsible for at least 2 suicides. One of his victims was pregnant. He threw a brick through her window, and the sudden shock caused her to go into cardiac arrest, killing both her and her baby. Yuki also ran a service called Brick Squad. a pay-to-order operation where people could pay him to target someone in real life. The options included Molotovs, drive-bys, and home invasions. His team would show up, film the damage, and send it back to the person who paid. While some found violence in performance, others found it in silence. Her username was FMLK. She was 15 and, as a result, her real identity is unknown. She was active in several 764 servers, fluent in English, and already trusted enough to move between chats that most people never saw. And that's how she found him. His name was Samuel Hervey. He was 25 and grew up in International Falls, Minnesota. He studied biochemistry and began transitioning after turning 18. But after the pandemic hit, everything fell apart. He dropped out of university, his marriage ended, and he stopped taking his medication. In late 2020, he was committed to a psychiatric hospital and diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. A few months after being released, he left the country. He ended up in Kyrgyzstan, moving between hostels in Bishkek. In early November, he created a Discord server. He called it an hero tempest, an infamous online term used to reference taking one's own life. The messages made his plans clear. He talked about what he was going to do and how it would happen. Most users ignored him, and a few tried to talk him down. But FMLK didn't. She reached out and moved the conversation into private calls. She asked for updates and told him people would be watching, that this was his chance to be remembered. Samuel's messages shifted between panic and calm. One night, he said he couldn't stop crying. The next day, he said he'd bought the gasoline. On November 7th, he left his hostel and took a bus to Rescue Mountain, an ancient pilgrimage site on a mountain just south of Bishkek called Tashtar Ata. He found a spot in the snow, set up his phone, and lit himself on fire. The entire ordeal played out live on a Discord call. At least 29 users were in the server while it happened, as he was propping up his phone, sitting on the ground, praying, then dousing himself. Some were recording, others were cheering. In one clip, someone shouts out the group. Another calls her by name.
Hey, shout out to Discord people. Shout out to fucking Xanax. Shout out to fucking 764.
Shout out to everyone fucking. Big shout out to Money and big shout out to FMLK. And we gotta say,
it took you so fucking long.
6323 is better than
so
764.
That's the worst death possible, man.
After Samuel's death, she took control of the server. He had made her an administrator the night before. That gave her full access, and she used it. A few months later, someone told her about a girl in another server. She had been posting about taking her own life. The girl was young, still a teenager, and so FMLK reached out. She brought the conversation into her own space, the same server Samuel had created. Just like before, she pushed the girl toward it. 15 people watched the stream. She put a plastic bag over her head and filled it with helium. FMLK stayed on the call until it ended. Another incident involved Caleb Merritt. He was 21 years old, living in Texas, and a member of Cult, one of the earlier groups connected to 764. He had already been active across Discord and Instagram when he found her. She was just 12 years old. The first messages were sent through Instagram. Then he moved the conversation to Discord, where he invited her into a private chat room. From there, things escalated. He told her to carve his name into her skin, told her to keep cutting, and asked her to send proof. She did what he asked, not because she understood what was happening, but because he made her believe it was love. In February 2021, Merritt drove from Texas to Virginia. He set up camp in the woods behind her house. A few days later, he told her to meet him. She left without telling anyone. They were found the next day in Henderson, North Carolina. An Amber Alert had been issued. When officers found her, she told them she had run away because she loved him, that they were going to start a life together. She didn't understand what had been done to her. Merritt was arrested and later indicted on multiple charges: assault of a child under the age of 13, abduction with intent to defile, the production of CSAM, and solicitation of a minor. He was convicted and sentenced to 350 years in prison. For investigators, it showed just how far the manipulation could go, the kind that convinces someone to leave everything behind because they think it's what they want. But what's been uncovered so far isn't the whole picture. These stories are only a fraction of what the com has already done, and what it's still doing. Inside the group's chats, members traded images of young children posed in front of swastika flags, with some being as young as 5 or 6. In one chat, a boy offered photos of his younger sister. The buyer told him 15 was too old. He wanted her to be between 4 and 7. Thousands of files were moving between hands, with users competing for attention by finding the most shocking content they could. In one chat, a user claimed to have groomed a British person into carrying out a murder. Whether the killing actually happened was never confirmed, but the fact that someone was even boasting about it seemed to say enough. And eventually, it wasn't just kids posting in these spaces. The group had started attracting adults, men who didn't need to be groomed or coerced. They already knew what they wanted and how to find it. In Michigan, a 47-year-old man named Richard Densmore was indicted on 5 counts related to CSAM. He was a veteran, and online, he used the handle Rabid. He ran a Discord server called Sewer, where minors were streamed harming themselves and performing on camera. In one video, he filmed himself sailing toward what he called CP Island, a place he claimed held his stash. And in Florida, police arrested 34-year-old William John Scott Tulco Jr. His screen name was iKids666. His Discord bio read, "Unfathomably based father with the assault-loving daughter." He was active in multiple comm groups and had been for years. Inside this network, suffering became the currency. And for the people running it, there was always someone new to spend it on. The first major break came in the summer of 2021. Bradley Cadenhead, the teenager who started it all, was arrested by the FBI. His laptop was found during a search warrant, containing over 20 images of underage girls engaged in inappropriate acts. He pled guilty to 9 counts of possession of CSAM and was sentenced to 80 years in prison. Group 764 didn't collapse when Cadenhead was arrested, but it marked the moment things started to surface. By 2022, the FBI's investigation had already grown beyond a single name. That autumn, a team from the FBI traveled to the Europol conference and gave a closed-door briefing to European law enforcement. It was the first time investigators in Germany and France had seen just how widespread the network had become. Interpol joined soon after to help coordinate the growing caseload. Over the following year, the response widened. New criminal cases were filed in the United Kingdom, Germany, and multiple US jurisdictions. Europol issued a formal intelligence notification, warning of a new kind of grooming cult, one designed not just to exploit, but to radicalize, corrupt, and inflict serious harm. That same year, Discord confirmed it had removed more than 130 servers and banned over 34,000 accounts tied to the network, and the FBI issued a national warning and formally classified 764 as a Tier 1 domestic terrorism threat. All 55 field offices across the United States were now involved, and the RCMP in Canada also released a public bulletin. A US senator even pressed Discord's executive team for answers, and Telegram announced its plans to provide some user data to authorities in a bid to help tackle the growth of 764. And by May 2025, the FBI had opened more than 250 active investigations. So that just leaves us with one question. Where are they now? You'd think things would have started to slow down, but in 2025 alone, more than 15 people have been arrested across the world, all tied to the same cause. On January 21st, a 17-year-old known online as Ching was arrested in Romania. He was part of XVN, a subgroup linked to 764. Investigators say he sent hundreds of bomb threats to schools and synagogues in the United States and the UK, along with hospitals and government offices in Romania. He had also coerced teenage girls in the US into producing explicit material and pushed them into self-harm. Then, on January 30th, the US Department of Justice announced charges against 4 members of Cult. They were accused of grooming at least 16 minors, coercing them into creating CSAM and sending images of self-harm. All 4 faced the possibility of life in prison. On February 12th, a teenager in Bolzano, Italy, was arrested. He had been collecting weapons, manufacturing explosives, and, according to police, was planning to create a snuff film. He was charged with terrorism, illegal possession of firearms, and the distribution of CSAM. He had links to both 764 and the Order of 9 Angles. And in the same month, another arrest made headlines. Aidan Harding, a member of 764, was charged with possession of CSAM. He had also allegedly been planning a mass casualty event. Police found 20 firearms at his residence. Jairo Jaime Tinajero also pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including racketeering, CSAM production and distribution, cyberstalking, and conspiracy to murder. Along with another member, known as Vitali, Tinajero had planned to murder a 14-year-old girl who had cut off contact with them. The plan involved acquiring a firearm and dissolving her body in acid. They had already coerced her into sending explicit material. They also targeted a 12-year-old girl, pushing her into self-mutilation and urging her to end her life. Authorities confirmed they had coerced at least 3 minors in Kentucky alone. Police in Spain also arrested 23-year-old Hugo Figueroa in late February. He had threatened a mass shooting and bombing in Valencia, which triggered evacuations across the city. Figueroa had ties to both 764 and 09A and operated under aliases like Neo-Hitler 666. His electronics were seized and charges are pending. Then, on March 14th, 764 member Jack Rocker was sentenced to 7 years in prison in Florida. Investigators found over 8,300 videos and images of CSAM in his collection. His hard drive included folders labeled with aliases and one folder marked trophies. On April 3rd, a 28-year-old man from California was arrested and charged with attempted possession and distribution of CSAM. According to court records, he had coerced minors into producing content that included extreme self-harm and sexually degrading acts. In some cases, children were forced to carve names into their skin. Others were encouraged to take their own lives. And on April 29th, 2 senior members of 764 were taken into custody. Prasan Nepal, also known as Trippy, and Leonidas Varagianis, known as War, were charged with running a child exploitation enterprise. They had led a subgroup that groomed and extorted minors through Discord and Telegram. Nepal was arrested in North Carolina, and Varagianis was detained in Greece following an international notice from US authorities. On May 1st, in the United Kingdom, cult member Richard Ehimir was convicted of fraud and possession of CSAM. He had used stolen personal data to blackmail victims and was issued a 10-year sexual harm prevention order. His sentence, 12 months, was suspended for 18. And most recently, on May 4th, Brazilian police arrested 3 members of a 764-aligned group that had been planning a mass attack at a Lady Gaga concert in Rio de Janeiro. The suspects had been stockpiling firearms, Molotovs, and explosives. One had live-streamed himself setting a homeless man on fire, and another had allegedly been preparing to carry out a satanic human sacrifice at the concert, targeting a child. All of these arrests happened in the span of 5 months. This can only mean one thing: 764 is still alive and thriving. Agencies across the world are working to shut it down, but for now, it still exists. It's still online, still growing, and still pulling people in. If 764 has proven anything, it's that it doesn't need a leader, a name, or even a platform. It just needs someone willing to keep it alive. And someone, somewhere, is doing just that.